like a bully. You don't stoop to their level. You know, our motto is when they go low, we go high.
Always the one who catch the flame. The lines from the smoke remains the same. Our mother's love was not enough when they broke it down for being too tough. Maybe in time love will define. Put it together to say she was mine. Right from her heart, strong from the start. A woman who won't go for no. Oh, she can't be anything that she wants to be. She's alive. Oh, she's powerful, inspirational, in her life. Oh, they can't stop her now with their word of doubt. She's brave. Oh, she's powerful, inspirational, in her life.
We call upon all the communities to be tolerant, to reject prejudice based on caste, creed, sect, color, religion, or gender, to ensure freedom and equality for women so that they can flourish. We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back.
Maybe in time, love will define. Put it together to say she was mine. Right from her heart, strong from the start. A girl who just couldn't say no. Oh, she can't be anything that she wants to be. She's alive. Oh, she's powerful, inspirational, in her life. Oh, they can't stop her now with the words of doubt. She's brave. Oh, she's powerful, inspirational, in her life.
Does my sexiness offend you? Oh. Does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words. You can cut me with your lies. You can kill me with your hatefulness. But just like life, I rise.
Now my whole house is great. I can do anything good. I like my school. I like anything. I like my dad. I like my cousins. I like my aunts. I like my Allisons. I like my mom. I like my sisters. I like my dad. I like my hair. I like my haircuts. I like my pajamas. I like my stuff. I like my rooms.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Online Summit. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. It has been a while since I've been online, having taken some time off, not just to rest, but to travel. I went to the United States, managed to fly to Dallas, Austin, Atlanta, Minneapolis, Denver, Los Angeles, and Fiji. And I come back rested and rejuvenated. You just listened to the new theme for the Her Story movement. A beautiful, beautiful song sung by an amazing, inspirational young musician by the name of Crystal Starr. Now, when I met Crystal, I had no idea what we had in common. I thought I was interviewing her with regards to her music, the things that she does around music, and the release of a new album that she's released called Head Over Heels. It's an award-winning song. So Crystal is not just a singer, songwriter, producer, a CEO, and a philanthropist. She's also the founder of Little Voices. Now she's in the music business and an entertainment legend who is really making a difference by giving. As you know, the theme of the Her Story movement is the power of giving. As a performer, she has shared the stage with major artists like Ariana Grande, Stevie Wonder, Kanye West, John Legend, Paul Stanley, Drake, Lady Gaga, the Jacksons, and more. And she has now gifted this beautiful theme song called She to us for the Her Story movement. So it's really exciting to see our movement grow, to see the kind of women who are coming on board, not just to uplift us, but to inspire us with their music, with their stories, with their songs. I really honor every single woman who stepped onto our stage and our platform to share who they are. It humbles me to be a part of this incredible movement. So I bring to you our first speaker of the day, Crystal Starr, who is an amazing musician, is going to help us in the United States to take our movement all over the world with the power of her songs. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the first speaker of the day. Crystal, thank you, thank you, thank you again for being a part of this movement.
I'm here in my home studio, as you can see, some of the fun things, the guitar and everything. And I'm extremely happy to be here with you guys today to tell you my story. So I grew up in a small town called Walnut, California, by way of La Puente, California. With two loving parents, my mom and dad, and my two other sisters, Adrian and Tammy. And, I grew up pretty loved, sheltered. And I think my life wasn't really perfect, but it was enough when I had love in my household. So, just growing up, we had a very musical home. My dad used to sing with some pretty amazing acts. Jackie Wilson back in the day, and he used to tour with a gospel group. And then he moved to California from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And when my mom was 10 years old, she was from the Bronx, and she moved here to California with my grandparents. And So yeah, just my background is Puerto Rican and Black. My mom's Puerto Rican, my dad is Black. And so in our household, we had all different types of music, from like the Temptations, Prince, to salsa. I woke up every single morning in my grandmother's house, her listening to Celia Cruz and Gloria Estefan and all different types of stuff like that. And in my dad's house, he listened to Prince, all that kind of thing. So that was kind of my background. So I think by the age of 12, I had some crazy stuff happen to me. Well, not necessarily to me, but to my mom. She was kidnapped by her ex, and I was the one who answered the phone, and when she was trying to get away. And I feel like that was a part of my life that shifted my life, really, to life is real sometimes. But it also taught me how to be strong in those traumatic moments. And everything that happened to me growing up, it really made me a better person, who I am today, and have a lot of empathy and grace for people that are going through things, which is why now I use my story for impacting the world and trying to impact and impact kids. So as I grew up, I went to college and studied jazz music, and got a chance to really do some pretty amazing things and sing background for amazing artists. I got a degree in jazz, and then I went on tour with Heather Headley, Jessica Simpson, Ariana Grande. I've sung background for Kanye West and Stevie Wonder, a bunch of different artists. And then got a chance to star on Broadway as a Sherelle. As many of you guys probably know the songs. Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this. So that's the kind of stuff that they used to do. So I got a chance to star on Broadway
Hey,
as a
Keith,
Sherelle.
just wanting to make
And
sure
it was
you
life
got my
changing because I got to
message.
see what that world was like. And growing up in my household, my mom is very bright, as I can say. She was very fun. She is very fun. So yeah, so I got to explore Broadway and doing all those things. So after I got off of Broadway and after I graduated from high school, my neighbor used to take care of kids in foster care. And a lot of the times the kids would come over to my house, and just to kind of get away and come play all the musical instruments in my house. And I wasn't really a serious kid, so I like to have a lot of fun and just laugh and sing. And so the kids wanted to always come over and do those kind of things at my house. So I started to notice as they would come over and spend some time with me, or I would take them to my rehearsals or stuff, that it really changed their life being in a different environment that they were used to. So it was this one moment when this boy named Josh came over, and he wanted to wait with me. He asked me if I could wait with him outside for his mom to come, while the other kids next door went to Disneyland. So they all went to Disneyland, and he didn't want to go. He wanted to wait for his mom. So his mom was supposed to show up at 2:00. And I sat there on the grass with him, and 2:00 came, and then 2:30 came, 3:30 came, 4:30 came, and his mom never showed up. So it was at that time that I realized, the kind of disappointment that kids in foster care go through. And it could be little disappointments to big disappointments, and being ripped out of their house, seeing the things that they saw, like I experienced growing up. But I also had loving parents, who were there for me and supported me. I wanted to be that support for them. And the only way that I knew how to do that was by using my gift of music. So what I ended up doing was starting a nonprofit called Little Voices, and just started doing concerts. I got off of Broadway September 9th. And then by December 22nd, we had our very first concert. We had 300 kids. I had 2 weeks actually to put this together. And I met with the producer, and I told him what my vision was. And I wanted to fill this room with kids and give them Christmas gifts and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of discouraging at that moment because he was like, well, do you have a concert hall? Do you have artists? Do you have, artists? Do you even have kids? And I didn't at that moment. And he said, don't do it this year. Don't even think about doing it this year. Like, you don't have anything together. So as I walked away from that meeting, I said I would never allow anybody to tell me that I can't do something. So within 2 weeks, I had a theater. I got donated the biggest Christmas tree with me and my friend from CAA. It was the tallest Christmas tree that you've ever imagined. I had 5 major acts that came and performed. I had 2 choirs. We had a 17-piece all-women orchestra headed by Noriko Oling. We had, what else do we have? We had a drum line from Compton Middle School. And we had 300 kids attend the concert, 2 of which were adopted that evening. And it was at that moment that I knew that my purpose was to be a bigger voice for kids in foster care and in the inner city. And that was in 2011. And to this date, we have impacted over 1 million kids in foster care and inner city youth. And it's been one of the greatest experiences that I've ever experienced in my life. Anytime that I do something, I try to include kids. I try to include some foster kids in my productions or foster kids in my shows, or invite them for free of charge to come attend the concert and come backstage. So we also have another program that's called She Sessions. So the first concert was called the Crystal Star Christmas. By the way, we gave out about 300 gifts for Christmas to the kids that year. And then we moved on to doing a show called She Sessions, where we impact girls in foster care. We bring them, we bus them in, and we tell them that they're enough. They have 3 programs that they go to prior to the show. Attending the concert, we invite 4 Billboard top charting artists to come and perform for them. I also perform for them as well. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So those are some of the things that if I can do something, which is just using my gift, that's what I do. So now I'm out with this is my second album that I'm putting out, and it's called Pop Star. And I've worked with some pretty amazing some pretty amazing producers on this project. I'm really excited about it because during the pandemic, I wanted to really, truly find me. I really wanted to find who I was inside of music and not be afraid to really explore that side of me without the pressure of someone else's voice telling me who I was or what I should sing or how I should sing a song. So I started exploring production, and then I did, collabed with Keith Harris and Renard Hughes. Keith Harris is with the Black Eyed Peas, and then also Biscuit and Butter, they're artists and producers as well, Grammy-nominated artists and everything. And so this album is one of my favorite artists, one of my favorite albums to this date. And we just put out a song called Head Over Heels, which I wrote based off of the love that my grandparents had, and just an everlasting love rather than a love that doesn't prevail or is for a certain amount of time. It's basically a lifetime full of love. And I think our society needs a little bit more love nowadays. So yeah. And then in a couple of weeks, we're going to put out another single called, I don't know if I can share that yet, but anyway, we're going to put out another single in a couple of weeks, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And that's me.
Wow, Crystal, what an amazing, amazing story you've had.
Thank you.
I'm always inspired when I meet people who realize the power of giving. Mm-hmm. So I've got a few questions to ask you around what giving has done for you. First question is, what changed your life when someone gave to you?
It made me feel a love that it's undescribable, if that makes any sense.
Can you tell us the story behind that?
Yeah, let me think about that for a second. um, I really feel like somebody that gave me something. I think it really is just my parents. I think that the type of love that my parents give me, the type of support that they give me, and the type of support that I receive from my husband is kind of um indescribable. Like it's I can't describe it. It's having support from your family as well as um your husband is undescribable. I think even when you make a mistake and they support you and they love you through that mistake is pretty intense. And I think I can say, oh yeah, I can get material things or anything, but those kind of things fade away. But support and love from people who you love and admire is the biggest thing that I've been given.
I love that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing what can happen to a child, to a young person, if they're in the right environment. And I can see why you have this passion around these kids who are in foster care, because that's
Yeah.
really the missing piece for them. You can have all the material things in life, but unless you have family, you have people who support you and love you unconditionally, you can only go so far in life. So you had an amazing starting point there. So, my next question is, what changed your life when you gave to someone else?
What changed my life when I gave to someone else? I would say Little Voices has changed my life. Whenever we do any of these concert programmings or I go and speak at these high schools in the inner city, more than impacting them, it impacts anybody who's with us. I think we all kind of walk away crying because just knowing that when you give your time, how much impact that is on a child. I would say there was this time when because we go and visit a lot of the boys and girls homes a lot and do a session called listening session where we just talk to them and we listen to them and tell our stories, that every time we come on that campus to have the kids literally run up to us and said, thank you for coming back. Thank you for coming back. Um, it touches your heart like you can't even imagine. Like you feel like you have all these kids, like you're responsible for these kids. And it gives back to me more than I feel like I give back to them. It's changed my life completely for sure.
If that's a really interesting observation. When I started working with orphaned children, I was in Bali in Indonesia. I
Hmm.
had gone to visit an orphanage and I was a keynote speaker at a conference. So I went and spent the whole day there. I got there a day before. I was playing with the kids. We did a tie-dye workshop on the stretch of lawn. They had about 100 children. And I fell in love with a little boy. He was 3 years old. He was the youngest in this orphanage. So I thought his birthday was at the end of the week. And before I left the country, I went and bought him a little bicycle and some gifts and decided to go and have a little birthday party with him. So I get to the orphanage in the morning, and this little guy is going to school. They didn't know I was coming back. Had his little backpack, and he saw me in the taxi and he started screaming hysterically. And he
Oh,
came and opened the door, grabbed my wrist, and dragged me to the principal's office. He made
oh,
me sit down and he sat on my lap and he kept
oh,
touching my face and
oh,
asking this questions in Indonesian. And I couldn't understand what he was saying. And the nuns who ran the orphanage said, Gertrude, he's asking if you're real. And I said, what do you mean? She said
oh,
that we get a lot of visitors who come to this orphanage, but nobody has ever come back in the same week. And that's
oh,
what you're talking about. And a lot of people who give need to remember that don't do it as a one-off thing.
yes,
Keep going back. These kids need to see some consistency in their lives.
yes.
Most of them have already lost their parents, and
Hmm.
you just go there on a one-off and you don't come back.
Yeah,
So that's a very important thing about giving, and especially when you're dealing with young children. So thank you for bringing that up. That totally changed my life in terms of
Absolutely.
how I work with children who are in orphanages. So, why is giving so important for the future of humanity, do you think?
I think that the more that we give, the more you become humble. It humbles yourself. And I think that a lot of our humanity needs to be humbled. Um, Regardless of whatever somebody did to you or some mistake that somebody made, it shows you um, what is the word? uh, I forgot what the word is, but it shows you how to just become humble. Because I think when you give, you have to give without expectation. You have to strip everything of yourself. You have to want to give. And I think that's what people a lot of times forget about giving. Giving is about giving and with no expectation behind it. And when you give without expectation, you'll see how your life is going to grow, how much your life is going to expand. Um, and just even with the people around you, you'll start seeing all the people that are around you who want to give as well, and you'll start receiving more than what you expected without expectation.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my grandmother used to say that this universe is like a giant bank, and you have to keep depositing good deeds wherever you go. And it comes back tenfold, not from the people you help, but
Mm-hmm.
through these weird little synchronistic happenings, or you meet the right person who's linked to something you're working on. That's another really good reminder in terms of the power of giving. So
Absolutely.
let's go now to your creativity and who you are as a musician and how you got started. Let's say there is a young person who's listening to this podcast interview right now,
Mm-hmm.
and they know they've got a gift, but they're not sure where to start. If I could take you back to the younger you, and you could give yourself three nuggets of wisdom about being a musician, about putting yourself out there in the public eye as a performer, what three nuggets of wisdom would you give?
The three nuggets. The first one would be believe in yourself. It took me a very long time to believe in myself. I think I was always dependent on somebody else's opinion of whether I was good enough or whether I could do it. And I would always try to surround myself with stronger people than I was because I didn't feel strong enough. So the first one I would say is believe in yourself, Crystal. The second one I would say is stick. I don't think I ever had the problem of sticking my guns to who I was, because I think a lot of people tried to tell me what I needed, how I needed to, or who I needed to be as an artist. But I would still say, stick to who you know you are. Never compromise who you are. I think that's what the number two is. And then number three was enjoy the climb. Um, and never remember that the person that you're trying to pull on the coattails is trying to pull the coattails of someone else. So make your own lane and go for it, because at the same time, leaders are the people who make their own path. So become your own leader, and it's okay to be a strong young lady. It's okay to be a strong girl. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you know who you are and if you believe in who you are, that you will always become a leader, no matter what.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having that strong belief in yourself is everything, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't know how, just believe that you will attract the people who will help get you there.
Yeah.
You have to take the
Absolutely.
first step. I love
Yeah.
that. Now, we're going to have another little thought experiment, and I'm now going to project you into the future.
Okay.
You're now 100 years old, and you're
How old am
sitting
I?
in 100.
Oh, I'm 100.
With,
Okay.
with science and technology, I think you can live that long.
Okay.
And you are sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, your dogs, your cats, your husband, whoever is around you at that time. If you could have a conversation with the future you, this wise woman who's led you to that point, what would you say to her? I like asking this question because a lot of women don't realize that we do have all the knowledge we need to get to where we want to go. It's already hardwired into us.
Yeah.
And that's that belief little thing we were talking about. So, what would you say to the future you, this wise woman who has impacted on millions of children's lives, who has impacted on family, on friends, and has made a difference and is going to leave the planet in a better place than it was before she came?
I would say thank you for never giving up, because a lot of people give up, and any path is hard. And a lot of people give up because it's hard and it's not easy. Doing anything is not easy. But I would say to the future me, thank you for never giving up, and job well done.
Fantastic. Yeah, I have a little thing that I do for myself when I get stuck sometimes or when I start doubting myself. I go into my meditation and prayers before I sleep. And I can do something as simple as, what is our next step? I actually talk to the future me. And sometimes I will wake up and I know exactly what I need to do next, just a knowing who to call, what the next step is. Or I could be talking to somebody the next day and talking about the challenge I'm going through, and they will say something that links to the solution I'm looking for.
Right.
So we do have all of these answers in us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just have to believe it's there. You're never inspired to do something unless you've got the gifts to do it.
Yes, absolutely.
So, why should anybody support your nonprofit, support your work with children in foster care?
I would say that I only want people to support Little Voices if you want to support kids in foster care. I think that if it's a passion of yours and if it's something that you're looking to do, and to be with, like, surrounded by really good people who really actually care, then join us and or donate. We really do. Uh, I'm on tour 24/7. I'm traveling, I'm working, but I make my priority whenever we have something for the kids to be there. Like right now, what we're doing is we're collecting backpacks and putting some arts and craft and for this one boys and girls home called Hillside in Pasadena, California. So I make it a priority to be there all the time, no matter what, to always represent for the kids. So I would say that if you have a passion for kids, or if you want to be um, involved with a nonprofit that's not like your ordinary nonprofit. I didn't start a nonprofit to be like everyone else. Like, I didn't want to be this corporate, perfect cookie cutter type of thing. I just wanted to help. And the best thing was to do was make sure all my paperwork was correct, making sure that we do everything the way that we're supposed to, like we were already doing. I just wanted to help. And so that's why I started a nonprofit. And I think that if you want to be involved with a nonprofit that's doing things different and that's giving everything back, we don't have a staff. It's just me and my board. So this was started. All of this was started on my savings. All of it. I given all of my savings to the kids. So there's nothing there that's like, oh, it's a CEO that's taking all the money or anything. All the kids are getting everything. And so anytime you give, you're giving directly to a child when you give to Little Voices.
Oh, fantastic. So how can people get hold of you, Crystal? What is the best way for people to get in contact with you who want to contribute?
Yeah. So if you guys want to get a hold of me, you can visit me on my Instagram, which is down below, Crystal Star Music, or you can go to my website, crystalstar.com. This is with 2 R's. Or if you want more information about Little Voices, please visit littlevoices.me, M-E. So that's what Little Voices is. And I'll be sure to try to answer everyone as I can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming online today. Is there anything I should have asked you and I didn't?
There's nothing that you should have asked me, but I love your name, HerStory, because I have a song called She that I'd love for you to listen to. I think it'll impact you guys a lot. It's called She, and it's on YouTube if you want to take a look at that.
Oh, fantastic.
Mhm.
I might just edit this video and add it to the end of this call, of this interview. That would be beautiful. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you
And
so much.
thank you to everybody who has tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is a movement of women who have a focus on social impact and social justice. We are out to change the world one story at a time, one woman at a time, one child at a time. When we launched, our focus was around women and children. Since COVID, we've extended it to the elderly, the homeless, and the disabled as well. So please follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. We're on all of the major social media platforms. Be inspired by these amazing stories. Take action, support at least one of the women who's coming forward. And if you have a passion for children, here's an amazing project that Crystal has started that you can plug right into as well. So have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Crystal, thank you again for this amazing interview. I'm really excited to have met you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Nice meeting you as well.
Love you. Bye for now, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow.
Bye.
So that was the amazing Crystal Star. And I'm going to share her video again, another version of it, which I found on YouTube. And this is now going to be the theme song for the Her Story movement. Really exciting to have found this amazing young woman who's doing some phenomenal things on the planet. So enjoy the second version of Crystal's song before I introduce our next speaker. Crystal Star, everybody, enjoy.
Take this song and make it your own, Father God, because it does not belong to us, it belongs to you.
Everybody bless?
Yeah.
Okay, she take one. Mark.
Always, always. Always the one who catch the blame. The lines from a smile remains the same. A mother's love was not enough when they broke her down for being tough. Maybe in time love will defy. Put it together, they see she was mine. Right from her heart, strong from the start. A woman who won't go for no. Oh, she can be anything that she wants to be. She's a love. She is powerful, inspirational, giver of life. They can't stop her now. Their words of doubt, she's brave. She's powerful, secret lead them down a string, 'cause they told her smile was just a game. Deep down inside she finally knew that loving herself she'd find the truth. Maybe in time love will define, put it together, they say she was mine. Right from her heart, strong from the start, the girl who just couldn't say no. Oh, she can't be anything that she wants to be. She's alive. She is powerful, inspirational, giver of life. They can't stop her now with their words of doubt. She's brave. She's powerful, inspirational, giver of life. Can be anything that she wants to be. She's alive. She is powerful, inspirational, giver of life. They can't stop her now with their words of doubt. She is brave. She is powerful, inspirational, giver of life. And be anything that she wants to be. She's alive. She is powerful, inspirational, giver of life. They can't stop her now if there was a doubt. She is brave. She is powerful, inspirational, giver of life. Someone who owns their own in tough times when she stands alone. Brave bird that flies with love by your side. Don't hold back, just let go and set yourself
What a phenomenal song. Thank you so much to my beautiful co host, Miss Terry, joining us all the way in the US. Lovely to see you there, sis. It was a great opening to today's online summit. And you are so right. The quickest way to your blessing is to bless someone else. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful reminder to all of us. So we move right on to our next speaker. The next young woman's name is Vanessa Carroll. She is a founder and an entrepreneur by nature. She is passionate about telling stories and seeing life from the other perspective. She says, what motivates me the most is taking an idea and making it a reality. With Greet Her, the goal is that women will have a tool to be confident to explore the world freely and empower women as they navigate new places. So she has created an amazing app called Greet Her. Vanessa is a young entrepreneur with a tech startup that is making a difference for travel, especially with women in mind, to be able to travel all over the world with no fear. So, Vanessa, what you have created is incredible.
I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Vanessa.
And it gives me great honor to share Vanessa with all of you today Here is Vanessa. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I am the founder of Greet Her. I am based in San Francisco, California. I'm 31 years old, and I am here to share my story. I founded Greet Her, which is a travel platform that helps women travel around the world in a safer way. You guys remember 2020 probably very well, right? And if you think about traveling during 2020, you're probably thinking about canceled flights, closed borders, and a huge mess. Well, during 2020, I got stranded in Morocco. And even though I'm an experienced solo traveler and I've been traveling a lot by myself, this was one of the very first times where I was really worried about how I was going to navigate this place. Really didn't know anybody where I was. It turned out that after a canceled flight, I ended up having to go to an airport that I wasn't supposed to be. And I didn't know anybody that could pick me up from the airport. I didn't have a hotel ready. I didn't speak the language, obviously, and it was midnight. To be honest, I was just crying in the airport, not knowing what to do. The only thing that I could think about was scroll through my phone, look for contacts, look for someone that I knew there. And I didn't know anybody. So I started thinking of ways to connect with someone local that was trustworthy. Because I really wanted someone to pick me up and take me to a hotel, show me the way, navigate me. And I started doing a Google search. And I kept looking for a service that did that. Kept looking for something like how to contact a local person here, or how to book a guide if you are a woman at an airport in a country where you've never been to, and nothing was showing up. The only thing I could find were Facebook groups and travel forums. But the reality is that if you're meeting with someone that you met on a Facebook group, it's really hard to know what their intentions are. And there isn't really a simple or easy way to verify who they are and if they really are who they're pretending to be. So long story short, I ended up having to navigate and trust that the taxi driver was going to take me to where I needed to go. Um, I spent about a month in Morocco, and I kept running into situations where I really didn't feel confident to be by myself. Even though I had a good time in Morocco, I realized that a lot of reputation that has built in countries like that is due to not being able to connect with women that could maybe be a resource to you when you're navigating a place. So throughout a month that I had to spend in Morocco, I kept looking for women, local women that I could create a bond with, befriend, and just really like have someone that could show me their local towns, tell me about their culture, and share with me all of those things that are going on in their towns, and for me to like really dive in deeper into the culture. It turns out that I only found one woman. And I was like, how is this even possible? There is a lot of brilliant women in Morocco and in all parts of the world. And if I started looking back at my previous travel journeys, I realized that I kept going to places where in my mind I would feel safer to go on my own. And then I started thinking more, and I realized that every travel or tourism experience I had ever booked, it was with a man and not with a woman. So I started digging deeper, and when I came back home to San Francisco, um, I had a book draft of all my adventures that happened throughout those months away during the pandemic traveling I was doing. And I started thinking about the global impact that women could have in society and social economical movements, especially through sustainable tourism, if more women were traveling and supporting women as they did it. So I did a research where I interviewed over 500 female travelers, and I asked them one question. Well, I asked them many, but one of the biggest questions I asked them was, what is the hardest part about traveling for you when you're going to a new place? 90% of them responded the same, which could be surprising and not, because I already knew that safety is one of our biggest concerns. But women kept saying, I'm worried about how am I going to navigate the destination, about my safety, gender based violence, how am I going to transport, how am I going to communicate. And this was kind of the eureka moment in my mind where I was like, I'm not alone in this problem. There must be an easier way that enables women to navigate places in a safer way. So I created Greet Her out of that story that resonated with not just me, but with many, many other women who are worried about traveling or who want to travel, but they don't feel like they can do it safely. So Greet Her connects female travelers to verify local greeters around the world. We call them greeters because there isn't a lot of registered female licensed tour guides around the world because there's a big wealth gap and there's a huge gap in the tourism sector where in some countries it's really hard for women to obtain this licensing. So right now we have created a network of trusted greeters around the world in which women can book them wherever they're going. Just today, we have greeters available for women in over 89 countries and 400 plus cities. This just means that we are opening the doors for all of us to explore all these little corners of the world. The most exciting part about Greet Her, about building Greet Her, is that through our services, women aren't only reducing their safety risks, but they're also supporting a woman's economy as they're doing it. Additionally, you do have a bestie wherever you go. Our greeters are women who are really excited to meet travelers, excited to meet women from other parts of the world. We have noticed that a lot of our travelers end up being friends with our greeters, end up having the most amazing time with them. And it's just really like a great social impact that we can change the world through navigating and supporting women with other women. Really excited to share more about my story. And I think ideally the goal is that women feel more empowered and they feel like they have a tool and a resource. And then never again they feel that they cannot go to a place because they don't know someone there. Because now, through Greet Her, women have the possibility of contacting someone anywhere they want. Even if we don't have someone in that place, we do whatever it takes to find them and verify them for you.
Oh my gosh. Vanessa, this is an amazing, amazing project. You know, a lot of women don't travel because they are fearful of traveling alone. This is
Correct.
an incredible idea, just to know that you're flying to a place and there'll be somebody who is familiar that you've met online before you leave home. And I know, especially for women who are older, who are not quite as adventurous, and now because of COVID, again, there's that bit of anxiety that comes with traveling.
Correct.
So, what have you found? When did you launch? How is the project going so far?
Yeah, so we're still really early. I actually didn't expect it to grow so quickly. I'm originally from Mexico, and my ideal plan was let's begin in Mexico and North America. But they quickly, within a few months, I had users sign up in 35 countries, and then it kept growing and growing and growing. And I was like, okay, women do really want this. I wasn't really prepared for gaining so much traction and so much engagement, right? So quickly. And so I started working on these, in early 2021, but obviously this kind of like idea and momentum happened during the pandemic, like late fall in 2020. But Greet Her launched its platform less than a year ago. And so in October, November, we're going to be 1 year all together. And yeah, we have learned that there is so many other ways that our services are useful for women.
Fantastic. Now, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and each time I ask the question, I'll go off screen because
Okay.
I would like to repurpose your content for our TikTok account.
Ooh, fun.
Now,
Okay.
if there was another entrepreneur online listening to this interview, scared, unsure about going into business, they just have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
If you could go back to the younger you when you were starting this project and give yourself 3 pieces of advice, what would that advice be?
Stay true to the mission and the why. Be really passionate about what you're trying to solve and ask for help.
Fantastic. And if I can take you now into the future, the vision that you have for this platform, for this project, if time was an illusion and I could teleport you into the future, you're 100 years old, you're sitting in your rocking chair surrounded by your children, your great grandchildren, your dogs, your cats, and you could ask a question or say something to this wise woman who's led you to that point, what would you say to her based on how you're living your life right now?
I would say I'm really proud that you created a platform that helped women navigate with less risk around the world while creating job opportunities for them.
Awesome. Now, in terms of social impact, what social impact projects have you been involved in? What inspired you to get involved and give?
Well, Great Her is a for progress company in which we are aligned with some of the most impactful global SDGs, which are increasing job opportunities for women through sustainable tourism and reducing safety risk for them and gender violence. That's definitely one of my biggest passions in my life. And I also am a volunteer manager director of Girls in Tech San Francisco, which is a nonprofit that helps bring more women into tech roles. I'm really passionate about that because being a woman in Silicon Valley, tech startup founder, I realized what a big gap there is with women being in this industry. I really need more women in leadership roles.
Fantastic. Now, why is giving such an important thing? Tell me one little story of what changed your life when someone gave to you.
I think, for example, while I've been building Greet Her, a lot of people have just gifted me their time, which is the most valuable thing that anybody can give you. And every day I learn from the people who have been giving me some of their free time to help with our mission. And I think it has really humbled me whenever I've reached out to someone about a topic that I don't know about. Being an entrepreneur really humbles you in ways that surprise you because there's a lot of things that you have to learn on the go, and having to ask for help, it's not easy, but I've been surprised about how people are really willing to give their knowledge and their skills to see other people succeed.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times people think that giving is all about giving material things like money but sometimes it's just your knowledge, your time, your expertise. Absolutely love that. Now, tell me another little story of what changed your life when you gave to someone else.
Hmm. I I would like to think that me sharing my story and sharing how important it is that more women begin businesses um, has been inspiring to others. I receive a lot of messages of women reaching out and men reaching out to thank me that I've been working on this mission and to thank me that I'm trying to come up with a solution for this huge problem. And I think that really helps me keep going. And I have a carpet on my desktop that I keep all the affirmations from people, for the hard days. And I think that really impacts my life and has changed me, as a person, and keeps pushing my boundaries forward, so I can become a better version of myself.
Fantastic. One of the things that I have done in terms of the tourism world and creating what I call a sustainable, I call it symbiotic tourism. You know, a lot of people come to Africa to see the sights, and they actually don't get to engage with the local community. They don't get to give back to the local community. So my company is called Walk on the Wild Side Tours. I take people on a trip where they spend 15 days, the first 10 days in a community with no electricity, no running water. It comes with a fear factor disclaimer. It is life changing. And then the last 5 days is 5 star. We do all the touristy stuff. Now, with the work you're doing, does the person who's doing the greeting get compensated for doing that?
Yes, absolutely. It's a business, so women book and hire our greeters. Pricing varies according to country, cities, and how much time travelers want them to tour them. So it really is exciting because by using our services, you are putting money into women's hands, and you're doing it in an ethical and sustainable way. At the same time, you're getting a really crafted and personalized experience that is unique. And as you just mentioned, it's getting you deeper into the local culture and the local community. We're breaking stereotypes in every journey that we're having and bringing us closer together.
Fantastic. So, why is giving so important for the future of humanity, do you think?
I think because we need to connect, especially through the pandemic. We all thought that it was going to be one of the things that united us. And now more than ever with technology, we're still lacking that bonding one to one, still having these personal relations, that are very in touch, are so important to humanity and to sustain peace and to just be like forgiving of how everybody's perspectives are different based on where they're from, how they were raised. And traveling does that to you. Traveling makes you realize how wrong other people are about those places, and giving back in such a way that's ethical, so important to sustain our peace and move forward, to a better world.
Oh man, you are singing my song. You are singing my song. These are the things that really inspire me. Thank you so much for coming online and sharing your amazing story with us today.
Thank
Is
you.
there anything I should have asked you and I didn't? I've got your website scrolling at the bottom of the screen. If anybody wants to come onto your platform and travel and get someone to meet you on the other side, there's the option. But is there anything else you would like to share? Some parting thoughts before you go?
Yeah, no, I would like to say that if anybody's watching this and they feel that they want to use Greet Her or they want to be part of our community, please reach out. You can see right here. Greet Her is our Instagram handle, and greether.com is our website. Reach out to us. If you're traveling somewhere where we don't have a greeter, as I mentioned before, we do whatever we can to find someone local, verify them for you. All of our verifications are free as of now. that will soon change. So if you're watching this soon, please go hop on our website, register as soon as you can. We are expecting to release our mobile app version soon, so stay tuned. And I really appreciate you supporting women business and helping women in the economy as you navigate the world through us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is meeting some phenomenal women who are changing the world in such unique ways. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for this interview.
Thank you
Have
so much.
have a fantastic day, everybody. I'll be back again tomorrow, and bye for now. Another phenomenal story. Creative young woman who saw a need for women in travel to be met by another woman in the country you're traveling to, putting money into the hands of that woman, getting to see a country in a different way. Because a lot of times when you go on organized tours, you don't really get to see the bulk of what's happening in that world. I have Sister Peace chiming in. Thank you so much, Peace, all the way in Minneapolis. I miss you guys. I had a fantastic time in the US. We'll be back hopefully in November to reconnect with all of you again. So thank you for watching today's Her Story Online Summit. So my next speaker is coming to us again from the United States. We have all US speakers today, and her name is Dr. Tara Scott. Dr. Tara Scott is a hormone guru. She helps people find the cause of their symptoms and get them on the path to optimal health. With over 25 years of experience and 3 board certifications in OB/GYN, functional medicine, and integrative medicine, Dr. Scott has helped thousands of patients struggling with hormone issues, including endometriosis, breast cancer, waist gain, and more. She is the founder of Revitalize Medical Group and Hormone Guru Academy, a course to help patients improve their hormone problems themselves. After suffering from infertility and curing her own endometriosis, she now helps others achieve the same balance. She recently partnered with Forum Health to take Revitalize to the next level. She has been speaking, including during a TED Talk, and educating for over 10 years, and has taught doctors her approach in 5 continents. Wow, incredible woman. Thank you so much, Dr. Tara, for being a part of the Her Story movement, for sharing your story with us, and empowering women all over the world with your work. So here we have Dr. Tara Scott.
I'm Dr. Tara Scott. I am 53 years old and I am based in Akron, Ohio in the USA. I have had quite a journey, and I started out life in Akron, Ohio. I was a middle child of immigrant parents. My dad came off the boat from India to study polymers. My mother came from Puerto Rico, so I was in a multicultural household, and we were a little bit isolated in such that we didn't really have extended family with us. But because I was an overachiever, I graduated high school at 17 and 1 week later started college. I finished that in 2 years and then headed on to medical school. When I was starting medical school, my parents announced that they were going to be moving back to India. So that was my first real kind of challenge at the age of 20, really being alone with no relatives in the United States except for a cousin several states away. So nonetheless, I put the nose to the grindstone and finished medical school and was a doctor by the age of 23. I was always called to help people. I always felt that I knew I wanted to do something working with women. So I was attracted to the field of obstetrics and gynecology because I really love taking care of women at every stage of their journey, from teenagers with problems with their periods on through labor, delivery, and then with menopause. So I was such a rewarding career to be able to deliver babies and spend time with women at one of the most exciting times of their life. But when it came time for me to start my family, I was faced with several struggles. I was never able to get pregnant without the aid of fertility medications. And so, thankfully, due to modern medications, I was able to have my first daughter, Josie, right before I was 30. It was a difficult labor and delivery, but she was healthy and doing great. Getting pregnant was a little bit harder the second time, though. We had 4 or 5 failed cycles of Clomid. I had surgery then that diagnosed me with endometriosis. I was also diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. After that, we had 5 more cycles of injections. I did get pregnant, but then had a miscarriage. And after that, we decided to move on to in vitro fertilization. And then thankfully, I was able to get pregnant with twins this time. That pregnancy was not without complications, though, because at 5 months pregnant, I had to have an emergency surgery to sew my cervix shut. And then I was supposed to be on bed rest for 14 weeks. And I went from delivering other people's babies and operating with a busy job. And so that was really hard for my identity. And although I always wanted to be a mother, it was a hard thing for me to shift my identity as a doctor and as a healer and to become a patient. After another rough delivery where I had the first baby vaginally and the second one was emergency C-section, but nevertheless, even despite being born 6 weeks early, the twins did okay and they thrived. So that was the first part of my journey that kind of made me feel and experience what it was like to be on the other side as a patient, to have all these procedures, to have to take all these medications. And it really made me interested in reproductive endocrinology and the female hormone system because of the problems that I had with my hormones and the problems that I had, conceiving and with having endometriosis and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. But I was busy raising my kids at that time and delivering babies. So I was still kind of in the traditional OBGYN world. But the next big turning point I had was when my brother suddenly died of a heart attack. He was 38 years old, and it came as a total shock to us. As I look back, though, he had every risk factor. He was a diabetic, he was a smoker, he was on a cholesterol medication, he was sedentary, he was overweight. But to traditional medicine, he was healthy. So I thought, there's got to be a different way to approach medicine. Why do we have to wait till people get sick to give them a diagnosis and a disease? Why can't we prevent it? So this had a profound effect on how I practiced medicine. So I decided to shift my practice to wellness and preventative medicine, but still concentrating on women's health and hormone imbalances. I went to further studying and learned all about menopause, learned about the endocrine system, learned about prescribing hormone therapy, specifically bioidentical hormone therapy, and became a certified menopause practitioner with the North American Menopause Society. But it's almost like the more you learn, you realize the less you know. So as I learned more about hormones and menopause therapy, I saw the limitations in traditional medicine. I wanted to think outside the box. I wanted to help people who maybe weren't sick, but didn't feel well, and people who wanted to have optimal wellness and prevention, but the traditional model didn't fit them until they had a disease that could tell us how to treat them. So I started studying functional and integrative medicine. And functional medicine is the study of the function and the systems of the body and getting to the root cause of disease instead of just treating symptoms. So if you have heartburn, instead of giving you some Tums, we'd want to find out why you had heartburn. Do you have a problem with H. pylori? Do you have too much acid in your stomach? Not the right kind of bacteria? Is it a food sensitivity? So we would look for the cause. So I did a fellowship. I got another board certification from the American Academy of Anti-Aging, Regenerative, and Functional Medicine. Just about that time, I also got the opportunity to be able to teach other doctors how to do this kind of medicine, testing hormones, prescribing hormones, and personalizing the dose and the regimen for each particular patient. So I've had the opportunity to teach in 5 continents. So that's something that I very much enjoy, in being able to disciple others, if you'll allow me to use that word, and teach other doctors how to do that. So I've been doing that for the last 13, 14 years. But again, kept learning, and then studied more in integrative medicine, which is a wider net. And that kind of includes not only functional medicine, which is the approach to disease, but also includes complementary therapies such as acupuncture, chiropractic, massage, herbal therapy. So it kind of widens the net, and it describes more the therapies more than the approach to the disease. Excuse me. But if I had to pick one big turning point in my life, it was July 19th, 2019. It was one of the hottest days that summer, and we were on a trip to pick up my daughter, Julia, from a summer college program. Now, my husband was an ER doctor, and he had been flying for over 20 years. That was his hobby. He was multiple instrument rating, and getting into a plane was kind of like piling into a minivan for my kids. But we don't know what happened that day. We inexplicably ran short of gas. So halfway through the flight, Dave said, "We're going to have to make an unexpected landing for fuel. But I don't want you to worry. Buckle up." But a few minutes later, I heard him say, we're too low. We're not going to make the runway. Prepare for landing. And so at that time, I had been teaching patients and teaching others about stress management, and I still didn't think there was a problem. So it started going through my head, maybe I should take some deep breaths. I started praying. I thought, this is going to be okay. But unfortunately, we didn't make the runway. We landed about 3/4 of a mile short. We landed into a field and skidded into some brush. My husband was unconscious. My son was in the co-pilot seat, and my daughter was sitting directly across from me. So I was the only one who could reach my phone. I had to get out of the plane on the emergency exit. And I was able to call 911 and wave overhead to some mechanics that were flying in a helicopter above. They weren't first responders, but they took a risk to find us because EMS didn't know where we were located. So that actually ended up becoming the worst night of my life. My husband was life-flighted to a major trauma center an hour away with a traumatic brain injury and several broken bones. My son was taken to a nearby hospital and treated for some lacerations and a lung contusion. But my daughter, Josie, my oldest daughter, 20 at that time, had the worst injury, a spinal cord injury. So she immediately had to go into surgery, and what was supposed to be a 3-hour surgery turned into a 7-hour surgery. And I was still in shock when the father-son neurosurgery team came out to talk to me the next day. "But will she ever walk again?" I asked the surgeon. The father shook his head no and mouthed, "It's a bad injury," while the son just looked uncomfortable and shrugged and said, "We don't know. It's going to take some time." And up until this point, I had worked so hard to get my kids. The worst thing that could have ever happened to me was that something would happen to one of my children. And here I was living that nightmare. Somehow, in those early days, the accident took place in New York State, which was not where we lived. So I was forced to live for 2 months in another state while my daughter was in inpatient rehab. After the 7-hour surgery for spinal fusion, we learned that she had severe damage to her spinal cord and the nerves. So we spent another 6 weeks after that in an inpatient rehab center. And thankfully, they were able to have a separate unit where my husband could do inpatient rehab for his brain injury. Life was never really quite the same. I mean, when we came back that fall, I was trying to navigate what was supposed to be my twins' senior year, Ryan and Julia, and it was supposed to be all about them. I was managing college visits. I was still on the board of the show choir, going to all their activities, had timer of the swim team while maintaining my practice in integrative and functional medicine. And I desperately tried to keep everything normal while trying to do any therapy I could do and research everything I could do on spinal cord injury to see if I could get my daughter the best recovery possible. We were told at that time that the most recovery from that type of injury could be up to 2 years. So I knew I had to kind of dig in at that time and do everything I could. So of course I focused on her, and I focused on the other 2 kids who felt probably neglected, that now their older sister who was away at college was back here, and it was supposed to be all about them their senior year. And it's bad enough being a twin and having to share the limelight for them. So I did the best I could, focusing on the kids, probably neglecting my own self-care. But again, being on the other side as a patient, even though it wasn't me, I was a caregiver this time, and realizing how difficult it is to advocate for care in a traditional medical system. She was basically told, well, let's get you back to rehab so you can go back to school, and let's get you used to your wheelchair. Nobody talked at all about getting more muscle function and getting her strong and therapies that might help her walk again. All of that was on me. And so I was able to find some really great spinal cord injury places that we traveled across the US to one in Salt Lake City. We went to New Jersey to get special exosome therapies. We did just about everything. And then COVID hit. So you know how that affected everyone. Well, we had already had our life-threatening stress, and I was already on high alert for stress. So the stress of COVID really didn't add much stress to me, but it did change our dynamics in that everybody was home again. I had just gotten my daughter, Josie, back to college. So that was another stress on my business, another stress on my family. And I was trying to recreate myself with telemedicine at my practice, and trying to make sure we can make ends meet at the business with the, how everybody was feeling the pressure, the economic pressure, not only of worrying about the pandemic. I personally got COVID then in the fall. And even though I'm one of the healthiest persons I know, and I actually ran 10 miles the day I started getting sick with COVID because I didn't know what was going on, I got a very, very serious case. I mean, I guess it would be classified as moderate. I ended up spending a night in the hospital because my oxygen saturation was low. So it just felt like every time I got back on my feet, boom, something was there to knock me down again. So I guess if there's a point of all this, it's about resilience. It's about the things that helped me. It was the community. It was the meditation. It was the yoga. It was the wellness. It was, I had to keep running, even though I would be exhausted. For me, that was important because those were my friends. That was my download. That was my therapy during our morning runs. And I had to lean on people when I normally wouldn't have to. So the story does have an ending. My daughter graduated on time. She's still a wheelchair user, and I don't think she'll ever be back to her baseline, but she has made lemonade out of lemons. She moved to LA. She's getting married in less than a month. She got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, and she is thriving. She's sharing her journey. She's a huge advocate for disability and accessibility and diversity and inclusion. And she's fighting for everybody else's right to have accessible transportation, accessible living space, diversity represented in the arts. So she's really taken a tragedy and embraced it and is making the best out of her life. My other 2 did get launched to college, and we tried to get some semblance of normalcy. And then my husband was never really quite the same and decided that he wanted to move on and was done with marriage after almost 29 years. So the latest step in my challenge is now, getting through a divorce, getting my oldest daughter married, getting through a divorce, and trying to remain some sort of a family after all the trauma and stress that I feel like my kids have gone through this last 3 or 4 years since the accident. So I think if anything, the learning point about embracing, my story is advocating for patients, advocating for myself as a patient through my infertility, advocating for my daughter, pushing the envelope and making sure you get the best treatment for yourself. The other kind of main theme is resilience and stress management. And I think that everything I learned about when I was learning about integrative and functional medicine came in handy for me. So when I had my kind of life-threatening stress, I already had those tools in place of meditation and heart math and breath work prioritizing sleep, making sure exercise was still a big part of my journey, and making sure I had good food to eat as well. So I've met so many wonderful people along the way, and I'm so fortunate that I'm able to share some of these tips with a lot of my patients as well. I think you're still on mute.
What an amazing journey you've been on, Tara.
Thank
Absolutely amazing. And, you know, it's just amazing how, as women, we bounce back. There's so much of your story that ties into my story. You know, the passing of your brother, the heart attack. I collapsed with congestive heart failure in 2017, hypertension and stress. Having gone through a divorce, 27 years of marriage was gone. And sometimes as women, we don't realize that the emotional trauma we go through gets trapped in our cells and it manifests in other diseases, right?
Absolutely.
So from what you have observed, what tips, what ideas can you give a woman who's going through a traumatic experience? I mean, what you've gone through in the last 3 years is crazy. This accident that you had, then the lead up to the illness with your daughter, now the collapse of your marriage. How are you coping? What are you doing for self-care personally?
Well, I first want to acknowledge something that you said, and it's about trauma. And so until I personally had a physical trauma, I didn't realize how many other emotional traumas I had from childhood, from growing up, from other things that happened. So I'm really glad to hear you acknowledge that. And that was the first thing, is a lot of people have to realize that emotional trauma can cause physical trauma, can cause physical symptoms. So I didn't even realize that myself until after the accident, doing some, a lot of therapy. The things that really work for me, I mean, prioritizing the essentials of health, which I'm very militant about my sleep. You need 7 to 8 hours every night for your body to heal and to grow and repair. So I make sure I do that. I like to exercise, and even if I'm tired, it usually makes me feel better. Now, there's a fine line between over exercising and exhausting yourself, and then just enough movement. It could be walking. It could be, I like to run. I also like to go to the gym and lift weights. But most of what I do is because it's social. I'm either meeting a friend to walk, I'm meeting friends to run, and I'm meeting a friend at the gym. So I need that personal connection because community is so important in times of stress. So, movement, physical movement, community, also very important. My favorite stress management techniques are things like yoga and meditation or breath work. And so I love the app HeadSpace. It kind of walks you through how to meditate. There's lots on YouTube. There's Calm apps, and a lot of it was even free at the time of COVID. So I like the app at HeadSpace to do that as well. There's some other great tools that we used, and I used it with my daughter, called Heart Math. That's heart rate variability. It's a biofeedback that kind of is like meditation, but you get some instant feedback to know if you're doing it well. And I've done things like acupuncture and neurofeedback, and of course, therapy with or without integrative therapies like craniosacral therapy and Reiki and other things like that. I ended up having a concussion at the accident, so getting that kind of therapy was good for that as well. And then what you eat is so important, and you wouldn't think of that firsthand when you think about stress, but think about it. When people are stressed, their cortisol goes up and they crave sugar. Serotonin is your joy, your feel-good neurotransmitter that can drop with constant stress. Then you're going to crave carbs and crave sugar and crave quick foods. So even when I was living in New Jersey, outside of in a hotel, when my husband and my daughter were in rehab, I made sure that I had good quality food. There was a Whole Foods nearby. I stocked it out. I planned meals. Even then, to make sure I wasn't eating on the run. I mean, as it was, I ended up losing probably, 6 or 8 pounds just with that whole ordeal. So I had to really make sure that I didn't lose too much weight and I was eating enough. But what you eat is so important. And then you have to find out what works for you. For me, I had already been in therapy, so I continued that and continued to prioritize that, as well as some of the other trauma therapies that I tried. I tried something called polyvagal therapy, which is an auditory kind of therapy. It tries to get your body out of fight and flight and get you into that kind of rest and digest. The theory is you either are fight or flight or you're freeze. So I found out that I was kind of in freeze. I was just numb to everything. So I did that. And I did some EMDR as well, which is, it stands for eye movement rapid desensitization, but they don't have to do it with eye movement now. They can do it with these vibrating tappers. So that's specifically for trauma.
Wow. Those are some really good tips and tools and ideas. Now, preventative medicine, again, a lot of us get caught flat-footed with health issues. There's certain things that as women we need to be aware of, things we can do before we get to a certain age to make sure that we age with grace, but in a healthy way. Now, I have just hit menopause, and I know that one's bone density will start decreasing, the estrogen is going down. Give us some tips and ideas around menopause, because that's a very big passion point of mine right now.
Well, absolutely. What we have to worry about in menopause is two things. One, you mentioned osteoporosis, because the peak bone mass is actually at age 30. And so by the time you hit menopause, the decline is most rapid the 3 years after your last period. But more importantly, the heart disease goes up, the risk of heart disease. I mean, you don't often hear, my brother was 38 years old. And while it was shocking and tragic, it's not that uncommon. You've heard of men at that age, but you rarely hear of women less than 50 having heart attack, because there is a protective effect on estrogen. But here's the problem. 20 years ago, there was a study called the Women's Health Initiative, which really left people thinking hormone therapy is bad. And there's several studies since then that have shown that, there is a good way and a right way to take estrogen. So if I could encourage everyone to find a hormone specialist to work with, it may not be for everyone, but it might be for you. And what we thought, hormone therapy is bad, it causes cancer, it causes blood clots. That was the synthetic estrogen from horse urine and synthetic progestin. We have multiple other options, including bioidentical hormones made from Mexican yam sources. So there may be options for most people. But if you are someone who's not interested in hormones or not able to, you've got to think about the basics: movement, sleep, what you eat, and stress management. So for osteoporosis, weight training, and that's why I've stepped up the weight training, is so important to make sure you continue to do that for your bones. The death rate 2 years after a hip fracture is much higher than 10 years after breast cancer, but people seem to fear breast cancer more. Heart disease, again, being the number one. Know your numbers. How is your cholesterol? How is your blood pressure? How is your sugar? Did you know that Alzheimer's is diabetes type 3? So that is something that's completely reversible. You've got to know what your levels are. You've got to eat enough protein and fat and not too many carbs. As a woman in menopause, we become very sensitive to carbs.
Fantastic. Now, let me take you into the future for a minute. You're now 100 years old. You're sitting on your porch, surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, your dogs or your cats, and you are reflecting back on your life, and you could have a conversation with the future you, this wise woman who's led you to that point. What would you say to her based on how you're living your life right now?
Well, as you know, my whole trajectory has just been changed, not just with the accident, but with the divorce. Where we thought we were going, when I thought I was retiring, where I thought I was going to be, is completely now up in the air. So part of me thinks I still haven't resolved, what are my steps? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Am I going to be alone? I don't know. So I do think I'm going to make it to 100, though. I think I'm going to be healthy enough, and I know I'll be with my children and my grandchildren. I hope I leave a legacy that people can really say I touched their lives and I helped them. Or maybe I motivated them to be more preventative about their health, or I gave them some kind of education or even validated how they felt. I know a lot of women, and I see that on, even TikTok, people reaching out that they're told, oh, those symptoms are normal, or just exercise more and eat less, but that's not going to work if you're not hormonally balanced. So I feel like a lot of women sometimes get dismissed, sometimes get invalidated, or we don't prioritize self-care because we're so busy taking care of our parents, taking care of our kids, working. It's the sandwich generation. So I hope when I look back to my 53-year-old self and I'm 100, I have created a legacy that people would say that I was kind, that I helped them, and I hope that I impress that on my kids and my grandkids as well.
Fantastic. Tara, thank you so much for this interview. It's been absolutely awesome meeting you.
Thank you.
I'm going to share your website at the bottom of the screen. I take it you're working with women all over the world. It's not just in the US, correct?
Well, in some ways I can remotely through some of our programs as a one-on-one medical care. Our licensure restricts us a little bit for that, but I do come to Australia. I'm coming back to Australia. I usually get to teach doctors there. And so I've been there 6 times and I'm headed there in November. So.
Oh, good. So maybe we'll get to meet in person.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much, Tara. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The HerStory Circle is attracting some phenomenal women who are bringing us their knowledge, their skills, their personal life experiences to uplift, inspire, and motivate us to live full and healthy, vibrant lives. So come back again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Tara, thanks again for this interview.
And thanks for all you do for women.
Thank you. Bye for now, everybody. Okay, that was Dr. Tara Scott, inspiring us with her incredible story. To have gone through so much loss, struggling to give birth to her children, getting involved in a plane crash, now going through a divorce, the things that women have to endure, and try and stay positive on top of all of this. Some of the self-care tips that Dr. Tara gave us, Terry, you were tuning in there in the US. Socialization is a great healer. Join a group. Don't try and do it alone. Find friends who can support you along the journey. And yes, laughter helps. Laughter is one of the best medicines for depression. It releases those endorphins in your brain and can really help you without you having to take medication for depression as well. So, as I said, the HerStory Circle is attracting women who are sharing their stories to uplift, to inspire, to energize other women to find a tunnel at the end, a light at the end of their dark tunnels. Our next speaker is Dr. Nicole Davis. She is a military veteran, an author, a Christian life coach, a social science researcher, and a conflict resolution practitioner. She's a certified mediator, facilitator, harassment prevention expert, and conflict skills trainer with 20 years experience in the field of alternative dispute resolution. She received her doctorate in conflict analysis and resolution, and her dissertation topic was Women in Ministry: How Conflicts Between God's Purpose and Church Doctrine Impact the Efficacy of Female Church Leaders. As a social science researcher, her areas of research interest include gender equity, organizational leadership, women's empowerment, and family dynamics. She also holds a master's degree in international management and a bachelor's degree in social work. So her background includes work in political offices, state and federal agencies, nonprofit organizations, church congregations, psychiatric hospitals, court systems, law enforcement, educational systems at secondary and collegiate levels, and community residents, family, couples, and children. Wow. So, Dr. Davis is clear about her why for everything she does. It's her family. For decades, she has not only provided guidance and nurturing to her own family, but she's worked with women and mothers to do the same. She believes that part of her purpose, along with her husband Tony, is to break the cycle of dysfunctional experienced in families by teaching parents strategies to enhance relational dynamics within the family unit. She works to demonstrate how to pursue education, career, entrepreneurial endeavors, and ministerial obligations, and healthy families all at the same time. So it gives me great honor to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Nicole Davis. Thank you so much for being a part of our movement, for bringing your wisdom and your knowledge to our community today.
My name is Dr. Nicole Davis. I'm based in Baltimore, Maryland, in the United States, and I'm 52 years old. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. There I was raised with my mom, and I have two younger sisters. My father was in and out of our lives, and that's really what's most important about my story, is that I come from a very dysfunctional background. Although my mother and dad were together off and on for over 30 years, they never got married. And so my experience with relationships and what marriage looked like was my father in and out of our lives, on drugs, in and out of prison. My mother emotionally detached as an only child for 12 and a half years before she had my younger sisters. I watched my mother try to make that relationship work. And there were times when she left me by myself, where she sold our belongings, all to try to make that relationship work. And so even though I thought I would be an only child, my mother had promised me she wouldn't have any more children. It was after my other sisters came along that I realized how much bitterness I had in my heart towards my mother and my father. I felt like my mom didn't care about me. I felt like my dad didn't care about me. And so right around middle school, when my middle sister was born, and definitely by the time my younger sister was born, I had just become very resentful. And I tried to do everything I thought I was big and bad enough to do at a very young age. I was drinking, I was smoking, I was running around, sneaking out of the house, sneaking boys in the house. I didn't care. I didn't care what happened. And I think the good thing about it is I always had a very bubbly personality. So people liked me, my teachers liked me, but I took advantage of all of that because the people that mattered the most to me, my mother and my father, were not there in a way to help me understand who I was and where I was going and what I wanted to accomplish in life. So as soon as I could, I wanted to get away. And then getting away meant going to the military. I went to the military straight out of high school, and I went into the Navy. And in going to the Navy, I found myself in Keflavik, Iceland. So it was 1991. I graduated from high school in 1988. But it was 1991 when I was in Keflavik, Iceland. And I come from a background where we didn't go to church. I can recall going to church at times. But as a family, we didn't talk about God. We didn't go to church. But I had a natural interest in God. So when I was in the military and I got to Keflavik, Iceland, I was at a point in my life where I felt very tired and run down. I felt like I had already lived a very full life. By the time I was 21 years old, and by that time I felt like I was 45 years old. I had been with so many different men, and I knew that I had no respect, no self-respect. And I knew at that time that I needed a change in my life. I didn't know what it was, but I took that opportunity being in this new duty station to do things differently. So I was making decisions like, okay, I'm not going to the clubs. I'm not going to mess around with any guys. I just want to get my life together as I'm getting ready to transition out of the military. And there was a change that I needed. I just didn't realize the change was God. But it was in Keflavik, Iceland that I found God. And at the same time, the man that I am now married to and have been married to for over 30 years, he was the very first person that I met at my barracks who became my friend. And then we both gave our lives to the Lord. And that's actually a whole story in and of itself, how we came to get on that journey together. But he actually grew up in the church and had rededicated his life to the Lord in the States at the same time that I was in Keflavik, Iceland. He was going to his father's funeral at the same time that I was dedicating my life to the Lord. And so when he came back and we got back together, it was very different. Our focus was different. The things that we did together was different. We were going to Bible study together now, and we fell in love and got married. So we actually met, got engaged, and got married all in the same year. I know it's crazy, but it was God, and I knew it was God. And God has shown himself faithful all these years. And what's important about that to me is because without God, the way I grew up feeling very hopeless, feeling very rejected, and I didn't know where my life was going. But once I found the Lord and I was able to read the Bible and get instruction and to be around people who also had a sense of purpose and identity, it changed everything in how I thought. It changed everything about how I lived. And so my husband and I, from there, began to create a vision for our lives and what we wanted as a couple and how we wanted to raise our families. My husband, his parents were married, but his mom, or his dad, left his mom when he was young and married another woman and raised that woman's children. And so with both of us coming from dysfunctional backgrounds without the strong examples of a healthy family, of a healthy marriage, it was this book, the Bible, that really taught us how to be together, how to love one another, and how to begin to start raising a family. And so we started that family in Iceland, or in Spain. We left Iceland, went to Spain, and that's where we had our first son. And then after a few years in Spain, we both got out of the military and moved to Maryland, which is his hometown. We came here, and that's where we had our second son. And so we have two sons. One is 28 and one is 24. Now you have to remember, growing up, based on the life that I had growing up, I never saw myself having a healthy family. I never saw myself actually being married. It was nothing I ever envisioned for me. I didn't see myself raising children with a husband. And I emphasize all of this because it is my family, and it is everyone's family. That is the backbone, that is the roots, the foundation of everything that we are. And so as we were raising our family, we were talking about the vision that we have for our own lives. He wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to school. He ended up, and we both did so. My husband ended up getting his JD. He has a family law practice, and I ended up getting my PhD. My undergrad is in social work, but my PhD is in conflict analysis and resolution. And so with that, together, we started our first organization, Empower to Engage, specifically about the family. And so over those years, I always talk about, it was my social work degree that helped me understand human development and the levels and the process of what we go through to mature and to come in a place where we can now make good decisions and have healthy, thriving relationships. It was that education that showed me that no matter what my past was, and I think between my education and my reading of the word, it showed me that I didn't have to I wasn't stuck. Like, just because that was my parents' story or that's how I grew up, that did not have to define what my future looked like. It didn't have to dictate how far I could go in my life. And so that gave me such a sense of hope to know that I'm equipped with information and a desire for something that I had never seen before. And so the fact that Tony, my husband, and I were on the same page with that fueled us and strengthened us to walk this journey together, to create, to parent, to love one another in a way that would help us establish something very beautiful, very loving. And now, as we look at our family, we look at our children, we look at what we've been able to accomplish, we know that it's not just us, that anyone can do this. Anyone can have this. And so that goes back to the work that we do with Empower to Engage. In addition to that, we're authors. We've written many books. We have books that are on marriage, on parenting, and on leadership development. We call them the Done Right series. And that gives their devotionals, daily devotionals. So it's marriage done right is hard work, but it's worth it. Leadership done right is hard work, but it's worth it. And parenting done right is hard work. We've started our own children's book, and it's for teaching children life skills, growing up with Bendy the squirrel. So we're doing that. And then women's empowerment is something that's really near and dear to me as well. And I've written a book called Eve, Where Are You? Confronting Toxic Practices Against the Advancement of Women. So that's a little bit about who I am and my story.
You have had an amazing background. What I love with what you've done is you've clearly illustrated that one's beginning does not define where you end up. If anything, your beginnings helped you create the life that you truly wanted. You know, you didn't see that family unit as a child, but both you and your husband were able to recreate that in this beautiful future that you created together. You know, when you talk about being married for 30 years, what is the secret sauce to your success?
One of the things that we tell people is that we were friends first. And that is so important because all these years, like, we always talk, we have always talked, and we just like being in each other's presence. And I think that is what is most important, because in that talking, you dream together, you get to learn each other's idiosyncrasies as you are learning yourself. And you learn what's important to that person and how to support one another. And so that has been the secret sauce. Our friendship is at the foundation of who we are as a couple.
I absolutely love it. Now let's go into women's empowerment. As you know, that is my passion. Empowering women in multiple ways. This new book that you have written is focused on women's empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
Take us back to the writing of the book. What was the source of inspiration for it? And what can women get when they read this new book?
Mm, that's a great question. So the source of the inspiration for this book goes all the way back to the writing of my dissertation. So when I started in school, I wanted to begin, I thought I was going to write on leadership. But as I was doing the research on that, and it's actually in the introduction of the book where I talk about how God really arrested me from a conversation that I had with my son that then put me on this journey to help women, because for us, it's very difficult for us to put ourselves first. And it starts with the fact that we're not even sure who we are. And God made that very clear to me that women needed support in that area. They needed support in knowing who they are, that they're valued, and that they have a purpose. And so He gave me the burden, very deep in my soul, to create information for women to be able to utilize, not just read, but to really find themselves. So the book is a hybrid book. It's part spiritual, it's part and academic, it's part therapeutic. There's so many components to it because it really helps the woman see herself from the inside out with a biblical worldview. And that's where it begins, like understanding how you were created, the magnificence of who you are, and that you are born for a time and a purpose that was already predetermined before you got here. And so we have to discover that. And so that's the premise of the writing of the book. And so when the dissertation was so head heavy that I had to then figure out, okay, how do I go from all of this academic conversation to a layman, in layman's terms, where people can read it and get it and understand it in a way that will make sense and where they will enjoy reading it. And the response has been amazing in how women are using this book and how it's changing their lives so they can measure how they are becoming better or thinking differently or now being more courageous in how they're facing every day.
I love that. So, leadership. What is your definition of leadership, especially when it pertains to women?
Yeah, so leadership is really having a servant's heart. And it's not the world's definition. You know, when you can think of leadership from the standpoint of having influence or having power, but real leadership is serving. And when you're serving, what you're doing is being an example, someone that people can look to or look at and then live their lives after it. Well, that's exactly what Jesus did in the Bible. People were angry with him because of his service to other people, because of his interest in other people and his love for people. And so true leadership is being willing to allow your life to be an example in how it is that you serve and take care of others. Can you imagine if we all did that? The difference that we could make in the lives of others if we allowed our lives to be an example. And that is an example in how it is that we treat and care for one another.
I love that. I was watching a TED talk the other day on leadership, and the speaker was describing how the true leader is the one who can identify the next leader who's following, that first person who steps up and emulates you, copies you, does what you do. So it's all about empowerment by the sound of it to me, that when we can plant a seed in another woman so they can see their own greatness, then as a leader, you have really done your job.
Oh, yes. Yes, you are absolutely right. Do you know, when we see others that look like us and we can use that as fuel to tell ourselves what we are capable of, That is so easy to do because we don't even have to think about it. It's just in being true to ourselves, being true to what we desire, being true to our passions. And that is enough to make a difference in another person's life without putting forth any effort. So a lot of women think, you say you're a leader. Oh, I'm not a leader, because they think a leader has to look or act or do certain things. When a leader, first and foremost, just take control of yourself. Just be good to yourself. And by leading yourself, and that's one of the devotionals that we have, uh, leading from the inside out is leadership done right is hard work. But by leading yourself, whether it's your children, whether it's friends and family, co-workers, people in your community, in your church, in your organizations, they will see just the freedom you have in being able to speak your mind, to go after what matters to you, to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. That's contagious and it can multiply. And I love that because it takes no effort at all, just being true to you.
Yeah, you have to be the possibility that other people can see in the world. I love that.
Yes.
Absolutely love it. Now, if I was to take you into the future and you're now 100 years old, you're sitting in your rocking chair surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, your dogs and your cats, and you're reflecting back on this amazing life that you have lived, despite where you started, where you have ended up with your husband and your family. If you could have a conversation with that future you, what would you say to this wise woman who's led you to this point?
In all my awe of her, if I knew anything about her background, the first thing I would say to her is thank you. Thank you so much for breaking the generational curse in your family. You didn't accept mediocrity and the dysfunctional family environment that should have made you a statistic instead of a success. Like, you really made a choice to fight against what could have been so easily for you to settle into. And then I would say thank you for not giving up on yourself, even though you didn't see the examples, even though there was no one to support your ambitious drive, that you still kept going. You didn't give up on yourself or your dreams, that you insisted on having a better life. And I would say and let her know that she is an amazing example of strength, of faith, and of love. And I believe that God, I would tell her, I believe that God is pleased with your service both to Him and to humankind by simply being true to you. And when I say that, get true about being true to you, it's true to you in the sense that we all have a sense of who we are. It's people around us, starting with our parents, of course, then our teachers or coaches or those that we meet, that help us to discover and to allow that to come out and to blossom. So being true to like the things that you enjoy. So as a parent, I could think about parents, they want certain things for their children, or they have certain vocations that they want their children to go into. And a lot of times children know early on the things that they like to do. But it's up to the parents to really see that and then say, "Oh, I noticed that you really enjoy this," or "You talk a lot about that," and to allow them to do that. So in being true to you is, what is it that brings you happiness or peace? Or what is it that really gets you angry? And to help people discover who they are. And when you get to that place, it's just a different way of living when you are pursuing the things that matter the most to you.
I love it. And really, your life purpose lies in the things that you are passionate about.
Yes.
That's why it's easy. That's why Steve Jobs can create computer systems and be really good at what he does. To him, it's
Yes.
not work, it's
Yeah.
play because he's really good at it.
Mhm.
So that's really good advice to anybody out there who has kids, who has young ones, who are trying to find themselves. Your purpose lies in your passion. So let's go back to this amazing book. Empowertoengage.com is your website that's running at the bottom of the screen. What can women get from this book? Why are you inspiring us to buy the book?
Yeah, so there are a couple things that are really important. I want to equip women with strategies to advance in every area. So when you look at this book, it's going to talk to you about what is the conflict, like what are the issues that women are dealing with. It's going to talk about what can you work on. So first of all, really learning your identity, understanding what your issues are when it comes to other women or other men, and then helping you to understand how do you feel about change, like what are your thoughts about power, and then what's your mindset, what's your perspective on things. And so as a woman takes this journey to do really the self-assessment and the self-analysis that's necessary to understand who she is, it is in that she will be able to come out of that and say, okay, I know I want to do this or I want to go in this direction. So the book will help her really understand her value and her worth, her sense of purpose, and the fact that she is the only one that can hold herself back from becoming or accomplishing whatever it is she sets her heart and mind to do.
I love that. I love that. And that's the power within that you were talking about earlier.
Yes, yes, yes. And it goes back, I can just say really quickly, with the name of our organization, Empower to Engage. So you can be informed, but I want you to be informed to then go and do. So we're going to give you what you need. And then the next step is then to go and accomplish or to conquer or to take, to fight, to stand, whatever it is that you believe, you are now strengthened and you are now emboldened to go and create whatever the life is that you desire. Empower you to now engage, to get involved, to not sit back anymore and wait for somebody else, but now you step into the arena, you step into the game, you become a part of the solution and making the difference in other people's lives, first starting with yours and then allowing yourself to be used as a vessel to make the difference in other people's lives.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely love that. So, as you know, the Her Story Circle is a social impact movement. And I'm always wanting to know what the women in our circle are doing in their own communities, other parts of the world to bring about social impact. What social impact projects are you involved in?
So I'm a part of a couple of organizations. One where is social innovation, where we're actually teaching people within the community how to engage in the community and showing them how to be leaders. So whether they're working on programs with the school or with those who are poor or needy within their communities, getting them associated and in partnerships with organizations that they can now do that work with them. So this one particular organization, we're getting ready to do trainings in September. As a matter of fact, it's a 5-week training helping those who are coming straight out of college, or maybe they're not in college, not sure what they want to do, but they still want to get involved in something. Just teaching them the fundamentals of how to become a valuable asset in your community. So that's one thing that I'm doing. The other thing is I work with a children's organization that helps children with reading, providing them interaction with other children so that they can be inspired by each other and how it is that they engage. And then through that, we're helping them to become smarter, stronger in areas of science, math, and their natural proclivities of whatever interests they have. So there's another organization that we're doing that through.
Fantastic. Nicole, thank you so much for this interview. It was wonderful meeting you. I'm glad the connection held up for us to be able to go from beginning to end with no hiccups. But absolutely inspiring. Love what you're doing. We've got your website running at the bottom of the screen. So if anybody out there needs support, needs mentoring, needs help, or if you have a young person in your life who is lost and is needing direction, please get in touch with Nicole. And it is about empowerment to engage. You can get all the information in the world, but until you start taking action,
yes,
it's absolutely useless to you. So thank you so much, Nicole. It was wonderful meeting you and doing this interview today.
Thank you. I enjoyed being with you. I appreciate it.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. The HerStory movement is attracting some phenomenal women with amazing and inspiring stories. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing woman. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Nicole, thanks again for the interview. Bye for now, everybody. Okay, that was yet another amazing guest with a focus on empowering young women to step into their own, to find themselves, and any support that you need. If you have a young person in your life, please get in hold of Nicole. She is available to help everybody along their journey. Now, our next guest is going to be presenting live. I can see that she is with us. And before she comes on, let me introduce this amazing woman. You know, every day I wake up not knowing who I'm going to interview, who I'm going to meet. And it just blows me away at the caliber and the quality of the women who are stepping up and coming to share their stories. So my next guest is coming to us from the United States, and I will share her bio with you before she speaks. Bethany Clemenson is a speaker, a leadership coach, a registered nurse, an author of Ditching the Dream, How to Live Life on Your Terms, who exchanged a life full of hustling for her worth for one created on her terms. She is obsessed with office supplies, journals, creating the perfect cup of coffee. When she's not speaking, you can find her navigating online high school with her teens, modeling cabins on her lakeside property, and spending as much time as possible on the water. After realizing that she was living a life she was taught to want instead of what she really wanted, Bethany left her corporate job in senior living, and her family sold almost everything they owned, bought a motorhome, and traveled across the United States on an adventure designed by her teens. Bethany's mission is to help others step out of the stress and hustle, discover what it is they really want their lives to look like, and go for it in a big, big way. Bethany, I love how you live. I love what you stand for. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Before we begin, please tell me how to properly pronounce your name, because I want to say Gertrude, but there's no R.
Yeah, so my name is pronounced Gertrude, just the way it's written. It's
Okay.
Gertrude without the R, and there's a long story behind the misspelling of my name and how an African woman ended up with a misspelled German name. I blame it on my grandmother, but it's Gertrude. Thank you for asking. So, Bethany, the format of the interview is this. We're going to give you 15 minutes to share your story uninterrupted. I'll be in the background listening, and then we'll have a Q&A session where I can really pick your brain and find out more about you. So the stage is yours. Like I said, welcome to our tribe. Thank you for responding, to stepping up and sharing your story with us today. So just reiterate, tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Okay. Well, hi, good evening. It's evening for me. It's about 6:15 p.m. So I am located in the North Woods of Wisconsin in the US. So I'm way up towards Canada. And the leaves are changing colors here. Fall is upon us. So I'm so thrilled to be here this evening. And my story is, I'm not even sure exactly where to begin, but I was raised in a very strict religious household. From the Midwest, and I grew up with parents that worked really, really hard and loved me very much. And in our household, it was just kind of an unwritten rule that we were not as good as other people. Now, it's not that my parents sat down with me and said that to me, because no parent is going to intentionally pass that on to their children. But as children, from the age of 0 to 7, your brain is like a sponge, and you absorb everything that is happening around you as truth. And so my parents didn't believe they were good enough. And because of that, it was automatically passed on to me. So I spent all of my growing up years shape-shifting, performing, pretending, trying to meet expectations, and feeling like I was constantly failing, because honestly, I didn't feel like I was allowed to be me. And I didn't really even know who I was. I was just trying to live up to expectations. Now, obviously, I didn't know that I was doing any of these things, because you just run on autopilot on what you're told is good and right and true. And so I took all of those things into my late teen and early adult years, and made terrible, terrible choices and partners when you don't believe that you're good enough, and you don't believe that you're worthy of things that maybe desires you have in your heart, but you're terrified to tell anybody because you don't think that truly that is something for you, because who do you think you are? Then you make choices congruent with that. And so I chose destructive relationships. I chose relationships with men that treated me poorly. I felt intensely, intensely trapped. In fact, in one relationship, when I was in my early 20s, we had been on and off again for about 7 years. And I was at work. I was working as a customer service representative at a birdseed company. And I would just go to work and keep to myself and put a smile on my face. And I thought that I had everyone fooled. But one day, this older woman came up to me at work, and I didn't interact with her. I didn't know who she was, but she leaned over my cubicle and said, "Bethany, I don't know what's going on with you, but I want you to know that you're smart and you're powerful, and you can choose a different life." And that less than 30-second interaction, someone seeing me, changed the course of my life. Within 2 weeks, I had left that relationship. My parents at that time weren't talking to me. I had basically lost all of my friends because I self-isolated. I was so ashamed as to what was happening, and I felt so trapped. And I was actually able to go home. I started in nursing school and began the first steps of understanding how powerful I am, as are you, how powerful we are. We have the ability to change our life when we just choose to think differently. So, fast forward, I was introduced to my now husband. We've been married 23 years on a blind date. I was just going because I got to fly to Florida for a weekend in the middle of winter, and I was desperate to get out of the Midwest winter. And I had friends that were there, and they convinced me to come. And that was in December. And he asked me to marry him in February. And we got married the following August. And it's been 23 years. I'd love to say it was perfect and magical and wedded bliss, but I don't think anybody that's telling you the truth about relationships would ever say that. But I carried my insecurities into this relationship as well. The good thing about this is at this point, I knew what I didn't want because I had a long taste of that. And Tom, my husband, is an amazing man, but we both came with our own baggage. And so we had the 2.5 kids, 2 kids, white picket fence. We built our dream house. I was working my way up the corporate ladder, and we were more disconnected than ever. I worked a ton of hours. I was disconnected from my children, and my husband and I, we walked on eggshells. We tiptoed around each other, trying to please each other, and I harbored a ton of anger and resentment towards him because I didn't feel good enough. And so anytime he had an idea that wasn't my idea or didn't match my idea, I made myself wrong. And I've found that the clients that I serve and the people that I speak to, many, many people struggle with this, that they make themselves wrong just because somebody has a different opinion. And what I've learned through the years is that it's okay. It's okay for you to think differently. It's okay to figure out what is good and true and right for you, and then be, do, and have that, regardless of who you disappoint. So I reached a breaking point where I knew that what I was doing wasn't working. I was working a ton of hours, receiving all the accolades at work. We had the money in the bank. We had checked all of society's prescribed life boxes, and we weren't happy. So what was going on? Obviously, this whole checking the box thing wasn't working. So I started reading self-help books and going to conferences, and then I could regurgitate really fancy quotes and recite all kinds of amazing things, but I still wasn't having the big changes that I wanted in my life. I was so stuck. And so the fear of change seemed like a better option than staying where I was and having my entire life fall apart, because we were on the verge of completely having a breakup. We were on the verge of divorce. We'd even talked about it. And I didn't want that, but I couldn't see how to fix it. So I started working with a life coach, and my mind was blown for like the first 6 months. I learned about things like mindset, emotional intelligence, and regulation. I mean, basic things like you don't have to believe everything you think. Like that one phrase was a game changer for me. I learned that I wasn't alone, that everybody, and unless you're a psychopath, everybody feels weird and oily and awkward and uncomfortable and too much or too little and gangly or not tall enough. Everybody struggles with that. And I had no idea. I thought I was the only one because, well, we don't talk about that, do we? So I began working with a coach, and everything in my life started to change, not because magic happened, but when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. See, there's a fancy quote, a fancy quote by Wayne Dyer that I actually live now and internalize in my daily life. So my life started to change since I changed. Everything about my relationships changed. My relationship with my husband improved because I learned that my resentment was my deal. I also learned that my entire life was my deal. And if I wanted to be happy, that too was on me. It wasn't about my husband or anybody else outside of me. And I began to take my power back. And when I did, my husband started to get curious because I was happier. Our relationship was very different. I didn't walk around offended or angry all the time. I stopped needing pills to go to sleep. I stopped drinking wine 5 nights a week. Everything was changing. But for the first time, I felt like maybe it was okay for me to be comfortable in my own skin. It was okay for me to be me. And so, over the course of a few years, our family started to dream together differently and think about life differently. And we sat down with our kids and made a list of places they'd like to see in the United States. We thought we would start in our own country first, and then we would branch out to other countries. And that list became a motivator for us to make some changes. And after my husband and I went to an event over a weekend, one time we were on the plane on our way home, and he turned to me and said, "We have to sell everything. Our entire life has been built out of shoulds, what we think other people want for us, checking boxes of society's prescribed life, and scarcity. It's time to step in to the abundant life that we were made for." And so we went home and we talked to the kids about the idea, and we pitched this whole idea of us selling everything and buying a motorhome and traveling the US and going to all the places that they had put on this list. And they thought about it for about 24 hours and then came back and said yes. And they were 12 and 14 at the time. So in a matter of 90 days, we packed up our entire lives. I gave notice at my job, and our house sold, and we hit the road. And if would tell you it was all butterflies and rainbows, no, but no regrets. Best experience ever. And today we're closer than ever. My kids are now. My daughter just turned 18. My son is 16. And my husband is my best friend. And when I got married, I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't know that marriage could really look like that. I thought that was reserved for like cheesy, Hallmark commercials or movies where a happily ever after happens. I didn't think that was real world. That doesn't mean we don't have disagreements or that we don't have bumps in the road, but our lives are drastically different today than they were 15 years ago. So in the course of the years after I began working with the coach, actually that coach asked me to be part of his company, probably because I was holding my friends hostage on the weekend and teaching them the things that he was teaching me, because it was changing my life so much. I just felt like screaming from the mountaintops that everybody needs to know these things that were small things, but huge epiphanies, at least for me. And that's what I find in the clients that I serve as well. So, small hinges swing big doors. I think sometimes we think that we have to do these massive things and take this huge action to create change in our life. And it doesn't have to be a trip across the US in a motorhome. It doesn't have to be any of those things. It could be forgiving yourself. It could be forgiving others that have hurt you. It could be just choosing to be open to the possibilities that are in front of you instead of seeing only the obstacles and feeling stuck in your life. It could be choosing to give people the benefit of the doubt instead of waiting to be whacked by people or taken advantage of. It's the small shifts that can completely change your life. It's one 30-second conversation that can completely redirect the course of where you're going. So I became a dual certified coach and I competed for speaking and kind of honed my craft for speaking, and I do speaking. And I recently published a book called Ditching the Dream, and it's available on Amazon. I'm wrapping up the audiobook recording this week, and I'm truly living a life on my terms. I'm still involved in nursing. I'm still involved in senior living, which was the industry that I left when we decided to travel. But I do it on my terms, not in a way that I'm on call 24/7, not in a way that compromises my ability to be present with my family. And that is something that I didn't know that could happen either. But it's amazing when you can pause and step out in faith and trust and listen to that inner guidance and know what it is that you want and be okay with it, even if it's really scary or hard, the doors that open for you, the ideas that come to you, the plan that unfolds in front of you that you never would have dreamed could happen. So I'm not sure if I went over the time frame or maybe I'm not to the time frame yet. I wasn't looking at the time. I apologize. But that's kind of my story in a nutshell. The thing that prompted me to reach out to a life coach initially, not just because my marriage was falling apart, but I worked in senior living. So I sat with seniors as they were facing death. And there's two things that really hit home with me. Number one, I'm sorry, Gertrude. I said that I was done and now I thought of something else. Number one, the people that I sat with, what I noticed is most everybody said to me things like, I had a good life, but, and then they would list off things. I really wanted to see the Grand Canyon. My wife wanted me to learn how to dance, but I waited too long and she passed away. I spent too much time working. I really wanted to take a train ride across Canada, but I never made the time for it. I wished I would have spent more time with my friends. I had a good life, but, and I really started to wonder if anybody got to the end of their life and played full out and really was able to achieve their dreams. Now, I'm not saying that, I don't know what's possible, but I do think it's possible to get to the end and have at least tried to do the things that you want instead of running on autopilot, doing what everybody around you wants. And as I did some research about this, as I was watching people die, I realized that the number one regret of the dying, and I don't remember the nurse's name, but there was a hospice nurse that did a study, and there's 5 big regrets of the dying. But the number one regret of the dying is that they weren't courageous enough to live a life on their terms. I'm paraphrasing, but that they lived their life according to what they thought other people wanted instead of really getting clear about what they wanted and going after it. And for me and for the clients that I serve, we're people that we want to get to the end. And when we face Gus, God, universe, source, spirit, whatever that is for you, and Gus says to us, I gave you these gifts. I gave you all of these things. What did you do with them? I want to be able to share a big story. I want to be able to share things that light my soul up again as I'm talking with him. I want to look back and know that I played full out. Okay, now I'm done for real.
What a beautiful way to end this amazing story. When I listen to you speak, I can feel you reflecting back to me aspects of my own life that I have done exactly what you're talking about. I lost my youngest brother in 2009. My youngest brother died of AIDS. He had just turned 29, and his death gave me back my life. That year, I went skydiving. I went bungee jumping off the highest bridge in Africa, off the Victoria Falls Bridge. I went whitewater rafting. I don't even know how to swim. I went deep sea diving in Indonesia. And, it's like I was able to tick off every one of my fears and live life to the full. So you've really brought to us today what death can do to remind us on how to live. And your job in that institution was a gift. You got to see people at the end of their lives and the regrets that they have. Now, they say that the richest places in the world are graveyards. They're full of people who had amazing stories, and they didn't even have the courage to tell anybody about it, let alone write it down in the form of a book. What inspired you to write this book, and what can people get out of it?
So for a long time, I I didn't want to write the book because a mentor of mine said that I shouldn't. Not just me, but he said, there's enough books, there's enough stories. Everybody has a book. You don't need to write a book. But I just kept feeling the nudge. And so in my experience, either we listen to the whisper, like the whisper, like nudge, that quiet inner knowing, or that knowing, that inner voice, that whisper becomes like a 2x4 whack. And I'm kind of a 2x4 whack kind of girl. I'm getting better. As I practice. But the whisper came to me. And when it did, I started writing down stories. And I had no idea how to put them into a book. And I would definitely not consider myself a writer. I mean, I don't, detail is not my jam. but I started putting the stories down. They were on a giant sticky note for several years, and I just kept adding to it. And I just felt like the book was going to come to life. I knew what the title would be. And I just waited until the next step appeared. And it's so interesting because I learned how to do online summits a couple of years ago. And when I did my first online summit, I went to Amazon. I found books that correlated with the message of the summit that I wanted. I found books that had at least 50 reviews. I read the reviews. Sometimes I ordered the books. And then I reached out to the authors and I asked them to be part of my summit with the reason why and how I was impacted by their story. And one of the people that I reached out to, her name is Elizabeth Lyons. She ended up being my book writing coach and my editor. And she owns a publishing company. And it all just fell together. That doesn't mean it was easy because it's still not easy. It's still new in the world for me, and it's still really scary. And it dredges up all the limiting beliefs of, are people going to read it? Is it good enough? Is it impactful? And I just have to trust that nudge, that whisper, that thing, that it's supposed to be there for a reason. And if one person is impacted, just like the woman at the birdseed store that came up to me and gave me a less than 30-second sentence, if one person is impacted by my book, then I've been successful. So
I love
I
that.
guess that would be it.
I love that because a lot of people think that the success of being an author is having millions of people read your book, but it's when you get to know that one person was impacted, because when you touch the life of one person, it's generational. It
Yes.
changes their family, it changes their siblings, it changes their community just by them being who they are because they've read your book. That's a really beautiful reminder to anybody out there who wants to be an author. It's not about you. It's about the other person whose life you're going to change. Absolutely love it. Now, your teenagers designed the trip that you took across the United States.
Mhm.
How old were your kids? How old are they now? How long did it take you to make this journey?
So at the time, they were 12 and 14. So they weren't quite in high school. And we were on the road about a year. And then today they're 16 and 18. I have a boy and a girl. My daughter is the oldest. So we were on the road about a year, and we actually came up to the North Woods in Wisconsin to visit friends. And our kids fell in love with it up here. Now, I don't know if it was because we had been out west, and in the US out west, there's a lot of rocks and it's beautiful, but it's not always really green. And I think maybe they were just rocked out. And so coming back to the Midwest and seeing these giant pine trees and beautiful maples and all the lakes up here and all the green grass, I think maybe it just felt more like home. And so they actually asked us if we could stay up here. They wanted to live up here. And so we sold the motorhome and we put roots down up here. So so that's kind of how it went.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, as you know, the Her Story Circle is a social impact movement. I'm inspired to know what other people are doing in their own communities to support, to help. You have set up a scholarship called Life on Your Terms Scholarship Fund. Tell us about that. What does it entail? How can people support the scholarship fund?
Sure. So I did a collaborative um, jewelry design actually with a woman. Her name is Elise Ryan. And we made bracelets. She made bracelets. I'll just be clear. I had nothing to do with making the bracelet, but I helped design the charm on them. And they're a life on your terms bracelet. And part of the proceeds from that bracelet go to a scholarship fund for any woman anywhere in the world that if maybe they want to take a business course to help, change their life, or they want to work with a coach, or they want to see a therapist, or they need resources, to pay the first month's rent of an apartment or whatever. But that's what, and it's ever evolving, but that's what this scholarship fund is for. So there's an application process that women can apply to be part of the scholarship. And then Elise and I sit down and we review the applications and then move forward. So that's a very teeny tiny way that I help. But I also really enjoy giving back. I've worked with our boys basketball team here at our local high school, and any chance I get to sit down with my kids or their friends, or even my daughter's a barista at a coffee shop, and I'll help the girls there as they navigate life and mindset and even a little bit of customer service, because I used to teach customer service in the corporate world. So I feel like giving back and impacting the world doesn't have to be some huge, massive, globally known movement, right? I think it starts in your home, and then it starts in your community, and then it starts to have a ripple effect. And every one of us have the opportunity to make an impact every single day, holding the door at the grocery store, noticing when someone is struggling and offering to help them, maybe load groceries, or if they drop something to get it. Or I was walking through a store today and I'm really tall and there was an older woman that couldn't reach the top shelf. And so I helped her get something down. And I think we all have the opportunity to make an impact on a global basis, right where we're at.
I love that. That's a really beautiful reminder. It's actually the Ubuntu philosophy that I love to share with people, that it starts at home, your community next. And if you do have something to spare, do something somewhere else in the world as well. Now, can you tell us a short story of what changed your life when someone gave to you?
Oh my goodness. What changed my life when someone gave to me? Okay. Yes. My daughter. When my daughter was in about 5th grade, they had had a week at school where it was career week. And so they're, in 5th grade, they're already starting to talk, at least here in the US, they're already starting to talk about what do you want to be when you grow up. And so they brought all of these professionals in. They had a lawyer and a judge and a police officer and a nurse and a doctor and a fireman. And of course, the teacher spoke, and they all came in and they spoke about what their profession was. And Friday afternoon at school, the teacher had everybody stand up one by one and say what they wanted to be when they grew up. And so my daughter comes home from school that day, and I was working from home. I was still in my corporate role, and I was in my home office, and Gwen is her name. And she comes in, and my happy-go-lucky 5th grader had big crocodile tears in her eyes. And so I immediately stopped what I was doing, and I asked her what was wrong. And so she told me the story I just told you about all these people coming in and everybody standing up. And she said it got to her, and she didn't she said she didn't know what she wanted to be. And then some of the kids laughed at her, and I asked her, "Is that why you're upset?" And she said, "No, Mom." And she started sobbing at that point. And so I got on the floor with her and wrapped her in my arms. And I said, tell me, why are you what is so upsetting about what happened today?" And she looked up at me, and I'll never forget this. She looked up at me and said, "Mom, why can't I just be me? I just want to be me." And that moment was a huge, huge gift, because I don't know about you, but my mind, my body, my heart, my soul has been screaming that my entire life. And I just think, what if we can set people free to be them? How world changing would that be if we were all in our right places, doing the things big and small, listening to those nudges and showing up as who we were made to be, regardless of who we disappointed, regardless of what anybody else thought? It would be magnificent. And I think that's how you change the world. And that's actually a story that I close my book out with. That's the last story in my book, because it was so impactful for me. And she gave that was a gift.
Oh, I love that. Wow. So what changed your life when you gave to someone else?
Wow. So the short answer for that would be, it's confirmation for me that I'm on the right path. So anytime when I'm working with a client, or maybe not a client, I've coached my parents, and they've had breakthroughs and they've changed their lives. And it's just the sense of peace and inner knowing that I'm on the right path. This is what I was made for. I was born to do this work. And I think every time someone has changed, not because I'm so great, but because they're willing to ask themselves hard questions and they're willing to do the work, for me, it's just more affirmation that I'm on the right path.
Beautiful. So why is giving so important for the future of humanity, do you think?
I think we were made to be in community. I think we were born to be together. I just did a TikTok about this because, okay, have you ever gone to the beach and you get your place all set up and everything's good and you're there in your little spot, and then someone comes and they set up right next to you? Or maybe you go to the store and you park and you're really far out because the day is beautiful and you want to get exercise, and you come back to your car and there's cars all around you. Or you're looking at something in the store, and then somebody, like 3 people come in the aisle and they all want the peanut butter too. Like, I think it's a natural thing for us to be in community, but we've gotten so busy hustling for our worth and so busy being busy and wearing our busy badges with pride that we have forgotten what it's like to love each other. And I think if we just slow down and can be present in those moments, we can love on each other well. And then surrounding ourselves with people that want to have that path too, I think is so incredibly important.
Beautiful end to our interview. Now, is there anything I should have asked you and I didn't? Your parting thoughts.
I don't think there's anything you
So I've
should have
done a
asked
good
me.
job with this interview. I love it.
It's such a pleasure to be here, and it was such an honor to to be kind of behind the scenes and seeing the end of the last interview. I sit on an exercise ball in my office, and I almost fell off my ball when you asked her about her older self, because I haven't heard somebody ask that very often. And in fact, that's like chapter 1 in my book, is I take people on this whole journey of meeting their older self and coming face to face with that. And again, it's like goosebumps, and I know our paths were supposed to cross for a reason. And just thank you for doing this work. Thank you.
Oh, I love it. So then that will be my last question. If you were to have a conversation with the older you, what would you say to her based on how you're living your life right now?
I don't think I'd say anything to her. I would sit with her and let her speak into me, because she's ahead. And what do I need to know? Where am I not listening to the whisper? How can I get to where she is and have peace and ease and live that life that I'm proud of at the end, that my creator is proud of at the end? I don't think I have anything to tell her, because she's far beyond where I am.
Wonderful. Bethany, thank you so much for coming online today and gracing us with your knowledge, with your presence. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story movement is attracting some phenomenal women filled with wisdom and a willingness to share their stories so we can impact each other's lives, one story at a time, one woman at a time. So, Bethany, don't go away. We're going to finish off with a beautiful song. It has been gifted to our movement by Crystal Starr, a musician based in California. Crystal, thank you again for this theme song. The lyrics, the words speak to everything that we embody as an organization, talking about the empowerment of women, how she can be strong, how she can be anything she wants to be. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for this. Bethany will play this song, and then you and I will catch up before I end the interview. Thanks again, everybody. Have a fantastic day.
How we explain that when someone is cruel or acts like a bully, you don't stoop to their level. You know, our motto is, when they go low, we go high.
Always the one to catch the flame. The last from the snow remains the same. A mother's love was not enough when they broke it down for being too tough. Maybe in time, love will define. Put it together, let's say she was mine. Right from her heart, strong from the start. A woman who won't go for no. Oh, she can be anything that she wants to be. She's alive. She's powerful, inspirational, giver alive. They can't stop her now with their words of doubt. She's brave. She's powerful, inspirational, giver alive.
We call upon all the communities to be tolerant, to reject prejudice based on caste, creed, sect, color, religion, or gender, to ensure freedom and equality for women so that they can flourish. We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back.
Maybe in time, love will define. Put it together, let's say she was mine. Right from her heart, strong from the start. A girl who just couldn't say no. Oh, she can be anything that she wants to be. She's alive. She's powerful, inspirational, giver alive. They can't stop her now with the words of doubt. She's brave.
my sexiness offend you? Oh. Does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words. You can cut me with your lies. You can kill me with your hatefulness. But just like life, I'll rise.
Now my whole house is
What
Wow.
a beautiful way to end our day. Thank you, everybody. See you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Bethany, hold on.